Well, good afternoon, good morning, good evening, everybody. Very warm welcome to this DTWS 21 Hard Talk session. When to collaborate, when to compete, finding partners across ecosystems and value chains. My name is Mark Newman. I'm a chief analyst at TM Forum. Delighted to be spending this next hour with you. We have three fantastic experts with me today. In different parts of the world. So I'm here in the DTW studio, which is in southwest London, also in the DTW studio, but a room just about a couple of 100 meters away from me is Joanne O'Brien. Joanne is VP Digital Ecosystems at TM Forum. Good afternoon, Joanne.
Hi, Mark.
Then we have a little bit further west of me, but not too far further west, we have Kevin McCaffrey. Kevin is CEO and founder of Trident. Good afternoon, Kevin.
Hello, Mark.
And then quite a lot way further west, over in Denver, we have Jared Ritter. Jared is Senior Director of Analytics and Automation at Charter Communications. Good morning to Jared.
Good morning, Mark. Good morning, everyone.
So before we dive into the topic of the day, I think it would be useful just to let each of the panelists introduce themselves, a little bit about what they do, and how their role relates to partnership. So maybe, Joanne, if I could start with you.
Sure, thank you, Mark, and good morning or good afternoon to everybody. So my role at TM Forum is as VP of Digital Ecosystems, and a key pillar of ecosystems is the ability to partner and partner at scale successfully. So we have a program inside TM Forum called Zero Touch Partnering, and this builds upon some of the earliest research in TM Forum around ecosystems and ecosystem modeling and the ability to partner and the importance of partnering. So we're basically taking a fresh look at that, understanding that being able to partner at scale is a key differentiator for any organization. To have it as a common component, the ability to reuse it for efficiency and interoperability and things like that. So partnering to scale is one of the key pillars of the Beyond Connectivity program, and it's why I have so much interest in this particular topic, Mark.
And Joanne, Kevin.
Yeah, hi everybody. Good morning, afternoon, evening for some people, I guess. My name is Kevin McCaffrey. I'm the founder and CEO of Trident. We're the organization who developed a product called CurateFX with the TM Forum, which is a business ecosystem modeling software. So basically our clients and TM Forum Catalyst members, work on creating strategies associated with business ecosystems and the business and the equivalent business models, and leveraging the TM Forum assets that Joanne mentioned. Personally, I've been an active member of the forum for quite a few years, and have kind of co-led a number of collaboration teams in around the areas of business ecosystems and partnerships, and was kind of part of the teams that contributed some of those early standards that Joanne referred to in around partnering and business ecosystems, and currently continue to be involved in several of those collaboration projects, along with numerous catalyst projects that are working on a variation of different types of ecosystems and different partnering models. So I'm really delighted to be here. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Thanks, Kevin. Jared, over to you.
Hi everyone, I'm Jared Ritter. I'm Senior Director of Automation and Analytics for Charter Communications. If you don't know Charter, we're one of the largest MSOs in North America, so we're an American cable company. I do for Charter exactly what my title suggests. I run a department that analyzes network and customer behavior, and then we use those analyses to automate the service assurance aspects of our network operations. All with the intent to elevate user experience and improve the economics of running a large multi-service network, as we do. Most of my focus these days is on Charter's wireless networks. Apropos to this conversation, we have a MVNO partnership with a very large US wireless carrier. We're building our own standalone 5G network, and we maintain several layers of Wi-Fi service in North America. So overall, my focus is delivering on Charter's ambition to provide the best possible experience for our customers, whether they're at home on their residential Wi-Fi, out of home on our public Wi-Fi, on our 5G network, on our partners' 5G network, or our partners' 4G network. So it's my job to ensure there are no trade-offs between experiences on those networks, and that the overall user experience is seamless and delightful. So that's who I am. Thank you for having me here.
Thanks, Jared. So those of you who have tuned in to the first week of DTWS, indeed previous DTWs and other events, we talk about partnerships a lot, an awful lot. But it seems to me that we don't actually necessarily walk through what type of partnerships exist within telco, exactly where partnerships are required across telco, and the extent to which telcos are looking to scale those partnerships, make those partnerships more dynamic, more frictionless, I guess. So I thought, just a starting point, should we just think about what are the different types of partnerships you might be entering into as a telco? I don't know, Joanne, you're going to kick that one off, certainly from your perspective. What are the partnerships that you look at?
When I think about partnerships, I think there's the broad brush overarching strategy and kind of direction of travel of the telco, and first of all recognizing that being able to partner successfully at scale is an important differentiator for the business. So I think there's that kind of visionary positioning into the business to say, we need to do something differently. And I think the underlying aspect of this is that, with 4G, we saw essentially an awful lot of other companies leverage the capabilities of the telco and really exploit those capabilities and make a ton of money. And we're all aware of the analysis which demonstrates that at the lower layer of the architecture, at the network and connectivity layer, the percentage of overall value of new growth in the of market share it's not there. It's that's around the 5 to 20%. So in order to move up the value stack, telcos need to create new types of business that goes beyond their comfort zone. And one of the most best ways to do that, to de-risk your strategy for diversification and pivoting the business, is to partner. So there's this, I guess, direction of travel, strategic positioning around partnering, first of all. And then for me, it gets into, well, what is the strategy of the organization? You have that network layer, you have your platform, essentially your ODA layer, your components, your applications, and then you have your business services. And you need to think about partnering at each of these layers. How can I extend the business capabilities? How can I think differently about the capabilities of my organization if I partner? So there's the capabilities I have today, and there are, what are the capabilities I want to have in the future? It may or may not exist inside the boundary of our own enterprise. They can be partnered services, and then we can create a whole pile of other new business opportunities and products and services. So I think it's getting that strategic level right first, and then evolving into the business, understanding how do I translate that into reality at the different layers. So I would imagine, a partner at a component level, something that's the common core to the business, is going to be reused many, many times, is quite different to a partnering at a service delivery layer. So there needs to be different types of processes and business management capabilities for each of those different scenarios. But it comes from having a clear direction, and a clear implementation strategy will come from having a clear general strategy and understanding, then analyzing that overarching strategy or architecture from a partnering perspective and a business capabilities perspective.
And would you say, Joanne, that there's an assumption that if, for example, the average number of major partnerships a telco has today is, let's say, for example, it's 10. It's not a real number, but if it was to be 10, is a starting point of this discussion that you will need to have a lot more than 10 if you're going to take your business in new directions, or not necessarily, or different types of partnerships?
I've asked some of our members this very question, and they have said they want to do more with the same people first before really assuming that it's a massive free-for-all with regards to scaling up partnering with anyone. So this brings you back to the point of trusted relationships. Partnerships are about trusted relationships. So where they have trusted relationships, they will do more with the existing partners.
And so if we take, an operator buys enabling systems from Amdocs, it buys networks from Ericsson, do we call those partnerships? Are they partnerships or are they buyer-seller relationships?
Well, it sounds like a traditional supplier relationship, but they also have to be done in a way that has a partnership element to it, because it's a long-standing relationship. The core products have to be developed in a way that is meaningful to that customer. So you are in a supplier relationship, but it's on the partnership spectrum, I would say.
Yeah. But a reasonable starting point is we're talking about partnerships to grow our business. Is the overall, I guess, theme here. Okay. Kevin, when you think about the world of partnerships from a telco perspective, do you sort of structure? Do you look at the different partnerships you can have and think about what they might look like across the business? Do you have partnerships in one area, the different partnerships in another area? How do you look at the world of partnerships and structure that?
Well, generally, when we're working with clients in the area of partnering and what they're looking at, it's usually quite often in the context of an ecosystem, and they're looking at opportunities. And I kind of look at it a bit different in the sense that service providers have to deliver a value at the end point to their customer. So the customer's needs and our customers of today are very different than they were even for a year or 18 months ago. So what you need, how the value that you need to provide and the capabilities you need to provide may not be available in-house. So you're going to be looking at partnering with other people. And this becomes especially true when you start looking in different verticals, or it's sometimes in new technologies. So it can be a case that you need to partner or work with a smaller startup type organization that may have some niche IP that's going to help you with analytics or customer intelligence or whatever else. But you don't kind of start there with the how, you start with the why. You start with, okay, what are we trying to achieve? What's our opportunity? How are we going to do this? And this in my mind is specifically true for things like 5G, where you're going to be looking at working in providing an end service that requires multiple participants, and let's call them partners to help.
Yeah, so you're talking about the delivery of new services which are not core telecom services, but where telecoms is embedded, and whether to bring in those new capabilities, you develop yourself in-house, you acquire, or you partner. That's your starting point.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think you will always have the traditional partnering, the supplier vendor type, customer vendor, those relationships are going to exist. But what I'm looking at is in terms of, people throw around, the whole transformational and the journey that people need to go on. And if you look at, for example, the TM Forum, the Catalyst projects that are, active as part of this event, there's a vast amount of them that are focusing on ecosystems and considering how is a service provider going to look at new opportunities and work with other people. So to me, when I think of partners, it isn't just pure the traditional way. It's actually looking at new opportunities that the service providers can use and leverage relationships with people that may not be traditional partners.
And I guess one of my frustrations as an analyst is that I hear all this good talk about ecosystems and partnerships, but until people speak to me about the business models and the commercial terms of engagement between the partners, it's not very real to me. And it seems to me that behind the scenes, lots of these partnerships fail because the terms of engagement can't be agreed upon.
Well, yes, I was just looking at a paper last week. Boston Consulting Group have said that of the ecosystems that fail, 85% of those that fail is because of poor design. And the fundamental area around that was governance. So that's actually not understanding and managing the partnership and the relationship. Yeah. And that's not just at the contract relationship where you have all the SLAs and stuff, but it's actually a data governance. It's at bringing on partners. And this is why, the programs like ZTP that Joanne referred to are really critical. And also the TM Forms APIs, because that's a level of governance in terms of data structure and governance within there. So absolutely, you can connect all of the dots, but if you don't have a way of managing that, it's not going to work.
So you mentioned zero touch partnering. So, which is what Kevin's after. I'll come back to Joanne in a minute, but Jared, I want to just turn to you. So can you talk to us about partnerships, Jared, both directly in your role, and I guess also more broadly within the charter organization?
Yeah, so there are obvious partnerships that we have, such as the MVNO that I mentioned earlier, where some of the stuff you're talking about hits home, right? How do you manage a situation where you're selling a product, on someone else's network, really? To me, they run the gamut, right? Because there are, also delivery pipelines where we have partnerships in not just that ecosystem, but also our cable ecosystem and our video ecosystem. And there's where some of our, more important partnerships are. So to me, I think of a partnership where I have, a complementary interest and a value stream with you, but I have an asymmetric ability to deliver there, right? So it could be a software supplier, it could be a solution provider. And it's funny, there are buyer-seller relationships that I do not consider partnerships, right? I consider, if I'm buying your off-the-shelf software, you're probably not my partner, I'm your customer, that's it. Right. But there are situations where I'm looking to, like Joanne said, de-risk a situation or descale a delivery pipeline where I don't have that expertise and I need to partner with someone who has it. And those are where probably our most valuable partnerships are. And each of them is very unique, right? They're not all like cookie cutter relationships that you can measure the same way. So it's very
interesting. So when you look at the world of technology companies that you either buy from or you partner with, or a bit of both, are you observing a growth in the drive to have more partnerships than before? Is that a general trend, and why is that?
Absolutely. I depend on those partnerships now more than I ever have.
And when you say partnerships, without going into detail, what does a partnership look like commercially? How is that different from a buyer-seller relationship?
They aren't spectacularly different, right? I think it comes down to the collaboration level and the mutual value, right? That's where they start to evolve into what I would characterize as a partnership, right? Where I am engaging, say, a company, to use Kevin's example from earlier, say I'm engaging an analytics, powerhouse, right? A startup company that's just got a very useful way of approaching data analytics, and I lack that skill set. This is actually true. This happened to us. We would partner with that supplier, right? In the beginning, it's suggested that it's going to be a buyer-seller relationship, but that partner is going to gain experience in my ecosystem. So if I'm deploying a standalone 5G network, that's actually an incentive for folks to work with me. And we see evidence of that where, we'll do POCs that are free of charge, right? And, there'll be a lot of extra attention, paid to our project because it's it's valuable for them to be involved.
And interestingly, is there a discussion to be had around procurement in the context of partnerships? And I've done some work looking at telcos' procurement of IT and network. And the historical procurement model has been, I, Mr. Telco, know everything. And I'm going to write everything about what I want in a document and give it to you as a vendor. And you then give me everything I've asked you to deliver. That's the RFP process. And what you're talking about now is more of a relationship whereby it's like a journey of discovery, isn't it? So you think of bringing somebody in as maybe a supplier, but it comes more partner-based as you learn more about what they can do. So is that challenging from a business model procurement perspective, or have you solved that one?
No, we haven't solved it. That is very disruptive, actually, for these more organic partnerships to come up, because procurement doesn't really have a way, as you intimated, they don't really have a way to handle that, right? They're used to doing RFPs and looking at, proposals. But when it's something more organic, where you say, look, directionally, we can transform this area of your business, you may move a lot faster than an RFP ever could, right? And that is difficult to deal with on a procurement level. It's not impossible. It just requires a lot of communications, a lot of executive buy-in, and a lot of good early results, frankly.
So do you do that by scaling up POCs?
Yeah.
Because interestingly, often when I think about proof of concepts, I've always been told that often they're run as pet projects that never go anywhere. They kind of sit outside the core business, but actually you need them to be part of your whole R&D process, I guess.
Yeah, absolutely. And you need to be ready for them to fail and accepting of that when it happens, right? Otherwise, they just start becoming science experiments.
Yeah. Okay, Jared, thank you. So, Joanne, so Kevin mentioned zero-touch partnering. It's a world that you live in. It's what you do day to day. Can we just go back to basics and talk about it? Why are we talking about zero-touch partnering now? Has it been an aspiration for us for 5 years, 10 years, but we've just never got there, or has something changed which makes it more important now?
Both, actually. So yes, as in, it is more important now because we have gone beyond the point of it being okay to rely on connectivity revenues for the next, decade. So I don't think anyone believes that is a growth strategy. So the growth strategy is to move up the value stack, and that's where partnering as a strategic capability can make a massive difference to the organization. So I think it's no longer a case of do we need to be able to partner properly. I think that conversation has shifted to how do we make sure that we can manage our partnership relationships effectively. And I think, there's the business as usual type work, and there is, essentially kind of blue sky type opportunities. And I think CSPs will take different approaches to the risk and differently in those two scenarios, because one is their cash cow for business today, and the other is building new opportunities for the future. And that's where you get into the notion of partnering with startups and things like that, where you have real potential for brand new business opportunities that are quite different outside the comfort zone. So I think all of it is important.
So Joanne, can I ask you a stupid question, which is, what exactly is zero-touch partnering? What do you mean by that?
I guess we want to automate the hell out of it, to put it bluntly.
So automate technically and commercially?
I think technically for starters, commercially, you'll always have the back office discussion about, is this the right partnership? Are these the right terms and conditions? So you'll have business process reinvention around that. It won't remove the discussion. It won't remove the rigor around the business decisions, and that's still important. But once you've made that decision, you should be able to execute one effectively. There's always even a difficulty with aligning with that business decision firstly, and then aligning with that business decision.
But it's an interesting discussion, isn't it? Which is, what slows partnerships more? Is it the inability to make business decisions, the lack of clarity over strategy, or is it the technology? Which is interesting. There's a great question from Chris Silverwell, which I'm going to come back to in a minute. But I just want to, on that discussion, I'll come back to you, Joanne. So Jared, on that discussion, I'm not sure how close you are to the MVNO business that you run. I don't know if you're very close to how that works, but I find the MVNO business fascinating because you could actually automate the MVNO business, both commercially and technically, it could be done. It should be possible for me, Mark Newman, to spin up an MVNO tomorrow, and I go onto your Charter 5G website and buy some wholesale minutes. But why doesn't that happen? Why isn't that being automated? It's because telcos are not clear about their commercial strategy around MVNOs. Do they want to have MVNOs competing with their retail businesses? And so I think there's some inner tensions within the telco around what their business is that can make partnerships quite difficult because they're not quite sure whether they want to embrace this or not. If I compare that with someone like a classic platform business, an Uber or Booking.com, they'll automate the hell out of everything commercially and technically because that's their business. They're a platform business. So I guess coming back to your point, Joanne, Zero Touch is an interesting one, and I think it is more technical, but do we think there's often a challenge around commercially, business model-wise, are telcos totally clear what they want to do and what they want their partners to do? Anybody can pick that up, but sorry, it's a very waffly, long-winded comment to you, Joanne, but I'm kind of saying that I think often it's the lack of clarity over strategy, which is a major barrier to telco partnerships.
I have a quick question. What would you say the difference would be between like a zero touch partnership, like the one you're suggesting, and say an as a service offering, like say network as a service or back office as a service?
Totally agree. So MVNO should be network as a service.
Okay.
But I'm not sure telcos would want to make it network as a service. They're probably worried about competing with their retail business and overloading the network. It's probably the reason why.
I think that's the evolution, right? That's the trajectory we're on. We're on the trajectory of exposing the capabilities of the telco in a way that allows for partnering, and the combination of these capabilities. Firstly, it becomes a business decision to expose these capabilities beyond the boundary of the organization. And that's what we've been doing in ODA for the last 7 years.
And so my guess would be that once we get to those great commercial discussions around network as a service, there's been massive internal battles in telco between the retail side and the network side.
Yeah, but like at the end of the day, if what we're seeing with regards to this being a game changer is the exposure of these capabilities in marketplaces where we scale up the ability to partner. Yeah. And that's the thing, like having those types of debates, I'm not sure the relevance of them. You need to think differently about it. You need to stand back from it, think differently, think how can I grow my business at scale, and make sure to not get logged into those.
I'm not disagreeing with you, Joanne. I'm just thinking about, about what the issues could be. Kevin, do you have any thoughts around that? I mean, am I going about something that doesn't matter, or do you think there's some truth in that?
No, I think you're onto something there, because my view is from the strategy, you've got to have an understanding of why you're doing it, what your customers want, what's the value you're going to deliver. The how happens after that, right? So the how is the connecting the technical bit, and no disrespect to probably the majority of people, but sometimes the technical stuff can be the easier part to deal with, right? And having that available and having things like the zero touch partnering is a massive game changer to enable things to happen. But you've got to have the rules of engagement as well. So it's like trying to play a game of football where you've got 22 different people play on the field with different rules, right? We know the ball is round, but or square or whatever, but you need to have that kind of governance, and that's is difficult at times for the service provider, because sometimes they're going into verticals and into business models that are new, and anything that's new and disruptive is a challenge, right? So you've got to understand, and I would see opportunities for the service providers, for them in verticals that are not traditional, whether that's in health, whether it's in energy, transportation, other areas where they're coming in, and one of the things is that they can provide more than just connectivity. The beyond the connectivity is important, and I think one of the big advantages that the telcos have, and that the telecom industry per se, is the level of standardization that exists within here is a real plus when it compares to other sectors. And I think that's a massive thing that that service providers can bring, and relying on things such as the open APIs is colossal.
Yeah, and I come back to that. I wanted to pick up on this great question from Chris Silverburn. Thanks for meeting, Chris. Maybe I'll ask you, Jared. Do you see signs that operators are walking the walk and actually putting enough investment into developing partner management systems rather than just talking the talk?
From my own selfish perspective, I would say yes, we are. I mean, it is a massive focus, right? As far as managing a system consistently across partners and types of partners, got a ways to go with that, right? That's much more difficult, because if you think of every partner as being, you know, an equal partner or an equal type of partner, that's just not going to work. So we're still learning our way there, but I think it's a major focus.
And that sort of partner management systems, does that sit within a broader BSS strategy? Or is that something you see as being separate from that, separate and distinct from that?
No, I think it's similar, right? And but I mean, it extends beyond that, right? It's also, you know, in our case, a network operations and a customer communication level thing. So, like I said, it just depends on the partnership, right? Each one is such a unique thing that managing them cannot be something that you think of as a consistent set of rules, right? There are directionally things that you have to do with each partner, you know, obviously on the BSS side that are critical, but you know, then there's the layer of actually what value are you getting from that partnership and how do you manage that?
Yeah, and Jared, I can see you're very keen on driving partnership. I mean, within the organization, within your larger organization, is there specific initiative or focus around partnerships? How do you, as a bunch of leaders, kind of agree that partnership is something that needs to be driven aggressively and prioritized across the organization?
Well, we always look at the economics of doing it ourselves, right? That's always got to be on the table, especially when you're talking about your core competency, which is supposed to be network operations. You have to kind of be careful about what you put forward as a partnership opportunity, because, you know, if I'm telling you someone else can do my job a little better and we should hire them as a partner, then that doesn't look good for me from a career standpoint. But I mean, what we do, like I said before, when we have an asymmetric ability to deliver on something that's very important to us, we'll consider a partnership.
Yeah, okay. And Joanne, sticking with this question from Chris, I mean, what do you observe in terms of the extent to which telcos are, you know, walking the walk on partnerships rather than talking the talk? Do you see evidence that we're making progress, making right decisions?
Yeah, I mean, I see all the work that we've been doing on ODA and deploying the modular architecture and deploying the open APIs as the precursor towards partnership management. I mean, when we were just getting the whole program off the ground originally, the ability to partner effectively, seamlessly, was one of the highest motivators for what we were doing. And while the early stage of the work, or the early wins for that work, is inside the business, the efficiency, the power this gives to the business to be able to think strategically and think about how they can exploit the capabilities of the business through partnerships and exposure of these capabilities beyond the boundaries of the business is just phenomenal. So I think that is a big motivator for the drive to deploy ODA and open APIs. Assuming that is at least well in play, then you need to start building up the strategy for growth beyond connectivity, and that's, you can exploit all of those capabilities then and really build a new business.
So those of you who aren't necessarily totally familiar with two of the biggest TM Forum initiatives are around open APIs, which Joanne was absolutely in the middle of and behind. How many years ago, Joanne, did you kickstart that initiative?
Yeah, I started with Pierre Gauthier back in 2013.
There you go.
And I was, I mean, it's no, I'm not exaggerating when I say that the ability to partner was the primary vision and motivator for the need to drive an API-driven strategy for the modular architecture of the telco.
So when we talk about, I guess, open, so there's APIs and open digital architecture, which is it's an architectural blueprint, I guess, for an open telco. Sometimes you and I, Joanne, we have a discussion around what might be internal and what might be external. And I know that I try and simplify it into an internal external, and you tell me no, I shouldn't simplify it. you put me in my place. But interestingly, when we think about motivations for ODA, Open APIs, is it still fair to say that the motivations are still primarily coming from the people who have inward-looking roles in telco rather than outward-looking roles in terms of new revenues? And do you see that flipping?
Yeah, I think we're not quite there with regards to realizing the potential of this technology. So if you're thinking about inwards and outwards, like we've used the analogy of Lego bricks for years in TM Forum to capture the notion. So instead of thinking about yourself with your own Lego bricks, think about yourself in a sandpit with all your friends and all their Lego bits, and your what you can build for new types of services is with all your friends' Lego as well. You're not just building with your own Lego, you've got this whole sandpit of stuff. And when you get to shift your mindset to that kind of mentality in the business, it opens up a whole range of new opportunities. You do need, like, it's not to say that the entire business is run this way, it isn't. But there is an element of the business that should be run this way. So you have to keep running your BAU as efficiently and effectively. That's the machine that's driving the revenue for new growth for the future. But there should be an element of your business is thinking in this way, which is looking to completely exploit all of these capabilities beyond and into new types of revenue opportunities for the future with partners, trusted partnership, and all of their capabilities.
So is there a bit of a risk that some of the partnership capabilities that are required almost fall in between the cracks of what, let's say, an IT team does and what a B2B product team does? Because it kind of sits between the two, doesn't it?
Well, I mean, you might be taking me a little bit too literally in that when we think about business capabilities, we're not just thinking about the IT estate, we're thinking about the enterprise. So you have there are capabilities at every layer of the business, and understanding those capabilities and understanding where you are unique, different to others, that's the secret sauce. I'm all about lowering barriers. So when you use language that kind of drives up new barriers between different departments, I get a bit uncomfortable with it. So to me, it's about lowering the barriers, looking at the business horizontally or from a new lens, from a capability perspective, and thinking how to exploit that.
Yeah, thank you. And Kevin, you've been talking about the potential for telcos in vertical markets, and this has been a discussion that we've been having probably for the last 7, 8, 9 years. Discussion about verticals. We didn't really look at verticals before. We didn't think in that way about verticals. But when you said before that you feel that there's certain capabilities around standardization, exposure of APIs that telcos are doing, which can have value in different verticals, do we have any evidence that that is the case, or are we still at the fairly early stages of speaking to these different industries and telling them, hey, look at how we've designed this framework, this process architecture here, why don't you see if it can work for you?
No, I think there is evidence. I think there's hard evidence out there and we see it in a couple of different verticals. We've seen examples you know, for in the banking sector, financial services, where they're looking at using things like ETOM as a basis for kind of RFPs as well. And so ETOM is the...
Just rewinding for people who aren't familiar with
yeah, so
ETOM.
ETOM would be the business process framework. So it's basically that set of Lego blocks that all have these process elements that people can use. So the process elements associated with partnering or with a party management and new products and services are equally applicable in other verticals as well. So I think that's really, really useful. And similarly, you know, an area that the TM Forum have been involved with for quite a few years has been in the smart city space. And that's an area that also, you know, has been leveraging many of the TM Forum assets. And for example, again, to the business process framework, creating the smart city operational model. So there are real opportunities there where the TM Forum and the telco sectors can leverage those standards in other verticals. But I do think, going back to the original question on the PMS, on the partner management system, I think, you know, we've seen, personally, we've from our work with organizations and service providers, we've seen some evidence of movement there. But if I look at it and compare it to, let's say, sectors in the tech space who are looking at building in you know, their whole channel strategy, you know, how they're going to manage partners, I think there's still a long way to go for many service providers to reach the levels of kind of alliances and partnering that are kind of so ingrained in many organizations. You look at somebody like Microsoft, their whole business is driven by partners.
Isn't that because the internet is itself built on partnerships? It wouldn't exist without partnerships. It couldn't exist, but I guess telco has existed until now without many partnerships. Maybe that's the difference.
Right, but
roaming, I mean, yeah, I mean,
roaming.
We've had partnerships for years in different forms, but I think what we're facing is the scale is different, and that's why we need the zero touch partnering. And that, you know,
yeah.
But we have had partnerships, and the methodology of partnering exists, but what we want to do is do it at a new level of scale.
Yeah. So, Jared, I'm going to ask the next question that's come up is a question I'm sure you've been asked and seen before. I'll ask anyway. So thank you for the question. To CSPs, are cloud service providers considered competitors or partners when they both sell cloud services to businesses? So just a quick reply to that one from you, Jared.
I would say yes, they are considered competitors and partners.
So would we all agree with that we have to think of them as both being competitors and partners?
And I think what you need to know where the boundaries lie. And I think this is where, you know, so yes, they will be both, but in different contexts. You need to understand the context, you need to understand where you're partnering and when you're competing, and the intellectual property boundaries of those. So, you know, you really do need to know where your secret sauce is, manage that, understand the different types of partnerships at the different parts of the business, and create those trusted relationships. Certainly you will, but you do also need to keep your separation, you do need to protect the intellectual property of the business.
But I would say knowing where that secret source is a major challenge we have for telco today. So where is your value? Is your value in your network and your connectivity? Is it in your customer relationships? Is it in your ability to reach other people's stuff? And so that, I think, is probably the challenge that you're alluding to, Joanne, which is why I think
everywhere at every level. And that's why we've got a very comprehensive piece of work around business capabilities, or around capabilities of the business, I should say, understanding where you have strength in your capabilities. So what we're doing is building up this capability map for the telco, which will allow them to self-analyze and understand their maturity for these different capabilities. It'll also help them to understand where they then need to partner. So let's, for example, they identify, as in Jared's case, that their skill set is low on analytics. They need to partner to develop that up. And they can also then look to the future of the business. Who do we want to be 5 years from now? Who do we want to be 10 years from now? And what are the capabilities we're going to need to get there in the future? So that business capability work is critical as a strategic and executive level analysis tool for understanding your partnerships of the future.
Thank you. And Jared, when you look at the partnerships that you have today, the new partnerships that you will forge, do you need to have sort of common strategies, frameworks, approaches, KPIs to measure the success of those different partnerships? Or are they so different that you can't do that, or you don't need to do that?
There's definitely overlap, but each one, can have unique properties for sure that are usually what's driving you into that partnership in the first place. So I'd say, there are boilerplate things that you'll have to satisfy. I characterize it more as establishing milestones. As Joanne said, the partnership like the one she mentioned, we had milestones where, hey, we need to do this, but we also need to institutionalize that skill set by 18 months in or something. So there are a lot of unique aspects, but there are also a lot of common aspects to these partnerships.
And would you say that increasingly you use platforms to help to deliver the value from partnerships? So you're thinking more of a platform-based relationship and business model? Or again, does it vary hugely by who you're working with?
Yeah, it does vary. I can't think of a situation where it was a platform specific, unless it was with like a cloud provider. But no, it's mostly concentrated on the value or the internal milestones that we associate with that partnership as being valuable outcomes for us.
Yeah, and just sticking with you, Jared. So I know at the start Kevin was talking about ecosystems which are simplified by saying it's lots of partners. So do you live in an ecosystem world in what you do, or is it mainly one-to-one partnerships, the world that you live in?
I think if I understand what you mean by ecosystem, that it's mostly one-to-one. It wouldn't be ecosystem, but you could characterize some of our partnerships as being ecosystem focused for sure.
Yeah. So is it fair to say that I think when we talk about ecosystems, we're talking more about what I call external partnerships. Yeah. We're talking about different companies coming together with different parts of the jigsaw puzzle to deliver an overall solution.
It's more multilateral than bilateral,
right?
Fundamentally, and you're looking, generally speaking, but it's not necessarily so. But you really are into a mode, because it's multilateral. There is new business models that have to be figured out, and there is the whole concepts of end-to-end management of the customer, as well as the management of the revenue share and settlement across all those different complex boundaries, as well as what is the ultimate business model, and potentially continuous evolution of those business models over time. That's not going to remain stagnant either. And it's that flexibility that you need. When you're really thinking about zero-touch partnering, you're thinking about being able to have the flexibility to manage any type of new business model in the future. That's the level of excellence that we're driving towards.
So when I think about ecosystems, I might think about a solution or an answer to a business problem that, let's say, an enterprise has. And the answer to that business problem is delivered by multiple players, offering different roles, a combination of technology roles, service roles, platform models, and different partners can get as part of that. And are we saying that those ecosystems don't really exist today? Or are we saying there's going to be a lot more of them?
We believe I believe we are in the early stages of already seeing that there will be a lot more of them. Yeah.
And why is that?
It's the nature of, well, as we started out when we were saying the telco needs to move up the value stack. So the ecosystems are happening, whether we like it or not. Do we want to play and be a part of it? Yes, we do. And that's where the new growth will come from.
Right. And so you have that ecosystem, and I guess ecosystem, it's a number of companies delivering capabilities, maybe digitally, increasingly digitally, I guess, delivered by, I guess, a platform. And so again, thinking of a telco role, your role can be just connectivity. It could be providing some services in new areas where you've built expertise. You might have expertise around experts in healthcare or whatever else. And I guess there's the overall orchestration as well. There are three positions I've outlined, which are connectivity, new skills that you've acquired, and then the orchestration. And I define orchestration as one whereby you are the one bringing those partners together technically and commercially, and you benefit from doing that.
Yeah.
Would anyone see things differently from that? Have I missed anything? Have I got it right?
I kind of describe it slightly differently in the sense that, the ecosystem is a dynamic network of entities, and those entities are, let's call them partners, that collectively generate value for an end customer. But those partners or participants in the ecosystem can play different roles. So there will be somebody potentially who's the orchestrator and kind of driving the whole thing. But you can play multiple roles within the same ecosystem, depending on what your role is and who you're interacting with and the services and the products that are being provided. I think there's great opportunities for service providers in non-telco ecosystems where they can provide certain levels of service and products in there where they may not necessarily even own the end customer, but they can participate and provide some key value that other participants couldn't have. Like one thing that comes to mind with service providers is the trust. And that's something that's very strong for their end customers. So that's a key aspect that service providers have coming into an ecosystem. So to me, when you talk about connectivity could be a service, but there are different roles within the ecosystem that can be played by the partners. And then just to wrap up on that, but each of those partners also can have a completely different business model. So how one person makes money and the business model for that, whether it's a shared revenue model or if it's a pure invoicing or whatever, is completely different from somebody else. And again, that's part of that whole partnering and understanding when you're building that ecosystem. What's those rules of engagement? How is it going to be governed?
Aren't we talking about what companies like Accenture do, rather than what companies like telecoms operators do? Can telcos do this stuff?
They have a lot of the capabilities. They have the trusted relationship. They have a lot of the capabilities.
And are you saying that Accenture doesn't have trusted relationships?
I wouldn't say that. I'm just saying what the telcos have, and I don't think it's an either or situation.
Yeah. Okay. I'm just trying. So Jared, I mean, do you think culturally? So if I think of your organisation, culturally, do you think there's still some work to do for the organisation to truly maximise partnerships, or do you feel that you're there?
Well, I think these are, these type of ecosystem partnerships are maybe a little more common in my business unit than they might be elsewhere, right? Because more of our business hinges on them, right?
Yeah.
For instance, IoT projects they're almost never just our project, right? There's always a partner involved, and for good reason, because there's a locality involved, and you want to leverage trust that's built up in that locality. Maybe maybe it's better than our cachet, maybe it's symmetrical, but they have the ability to deliver on what we might not want to do. Same with venues and managed Wi-Fi situations, managed wireless situations, and other network as a service engagements. These are pretty much part of our life in wireless, and the way that newer wireless technology is developed makes it a lot easier, because if we have to build the components of a network in a containerized fashion just to operate them, right? And that makes it easy to sell because cloud native, software development engineering, right? It's not necessarily always laying a circuit somewhere or managing some physical aspect. As you were mentioning, a lot of it is digital, and it's just API-ifying,
So you're almost saying that once you start to embrace these new technologies, capabilities, architectures, it will take you in the direction of partnering anyway.
Yeah.
It's part of the same journey.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's some great so I've actually found some more questions coming in the chat function. So I'll read out a couple of comments here that anyone wants to pick up on. So question from Philip Brumblecombe. Philip says, you mentioned that CSPs will tend to start with deepening value from existing partnerships before expanding. Is that as much because they're unsure which services to offer to which industries to grow enterprise revenues, and thus unsure which partners to reach out to in order to build an ecosystem?
I mentioned that actually, Mark. I don't believe it is to do with that. I think it's simply about de-risking. It's about recognizing that relationships are built from a point of trust, and if you can grow with existing partners, then people will take the least path of resistance. So I don't think it's exclusively, I don't think it's anything really to do with lack of clarity on where they're going. It's more to do with de-risking the partnership strategy.
Great, thank you, Joanne. And a second question also from Philip, so thank you, Philip. What you refer to reorchestration is, I think, mirrored by what a lot of the headliners refer to when they badge themselves as aggregators going forward. Do we agree with that, that service orchestration and aggregation is kind of the same thing that we're talking about here?
We positioned it as like the end-to-end management capability. We've had a number of research reports in TM Forum around the space and understanding which telcos are how telecommunications operators prioritize that role for themselves for the future, and there's quite a lot of variance there. But generally speaking, we do see that capability is available to the telco. The depth of the technical knowledge in the telco is phenomenal. That when we get into ecosystem type projects, the chief architect of the telco almost always ends up as being the system architect of sorts for the entire solution. So there is definitely depth of knowledge there that can be exploited by the communications operators if they choose to go down that path. But it'll be different for different companies in different regions. There's geographic differences. There'll be their own relationships with partners in their ecosystem with different verticals to decide whether that is the right thing for them or not. I don't think you're going to see a one size fits all there, Mark.
No. And is it also fair to say that we might see this opportunity, but we don't really have a clue what it looks like from a business model perspective?
From an end-to-end perspective?
From a monetization perspective?
I wouldn't say we don't have a clue. We have a lot of research to explore the different business models that we can be done. So what we tend to do is make sure that we are prepared architecturally for any business model in the future. Right. That's our role as the industry.
Good answer, Joanne.
But
Kevin,
I do think I do think there is the strength historically from a technical orchestration and technical aggregation. Yeah. I think we have a ways to go on the business side yet, but I think there's good progress being made.
Yeah. Jared, any closing thoughts from you before I wrap up the hour? Anything that you wanted to tell us that we've managed to avoid until now?
No. Regarding the last question, I think the question was, is orchestration really the same as being an aggregator? And I don't know that. I don't think so. I think there's an orchestration role, right, in any partnership that is, like Joanne said, normally it's a technical architect type role, and that could be anyone. Oftentimes, when we enter into a partnership with a non-telco, we're entering into it because we want them to orchestrate it, right? And we need them to because they have the technical expertise to direct that. But if it's an ecosystem thing, yeah, we usually are the aggregators of that effort, I would say.
Great. Well, I see we're up to the hour, so all of you, thank you so much for your comments and questions, much appreciated. To Joanne, to Jared, to Kevin, thank you so much for your time today. And we'll see you on some of the other events taking place in DTWS. But speak to you again soon, and thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, Mark. Thanks, everybody, for your questions.
Bye-bye.
Take care. Bye-bye.